Okay, so we are going to look at special right triangles. And I apologize, I'm trying to do this without, because I know the darkness has already kind of messed up some of this. It makes it kind of hard to see, but I know that you can find it on your review sheet. So we're going to look at special right triangles. Now, just to kind of remind you on special right triangles, you have two kinds of special right triangles. You have 30, 60, 90, and you have 45, 45, 90. So what I'm going to show you here, let me make sure that I'm in the right spot. Okay, so I want to pull this down a little bit here, is that you've got two types of special right triangles. You have the 45, 45, 90, which is the half of the square. That is your isosceles right triangle. So whatever this side is the same because it's an isosceles right triangle. Those two legs are the same. And then remember, the shortcut is whatever the legs are, we multiply it by square root of 2. Now that is our 45, 45, 90. For the 30, 60, 90, sorry, the paper's moving a little bit. For the 30, 60, 90, the 30, 60, 90 is 1/2 of an equilateral triangle, okay? So you've got the 30, 60, 90. Now in a 30, 60, 90, the ratios are the small side is here, the hypotenuse is twice the small side, and let me get this over here a little bit. The side across from the 60 is the small side times square root of 3. So those are our patterns. So let's look at the ones that we have up here up at the top. First of all, I have a 30 and a 90. That means this is a 30, 60, 90. The 8 is across from the 30, which means it is the smallest side. Now what does that mean? That means that the hypotenuse, which is y, is twice as big, because remember, small side twice as big, so y is 16. And the medium side right here is small side times square root of 3, so this is 8 times square root of 3. And that's how we solve that one, okay? I'm going to skip over to 29, and then we'll come back, because this is another 30, 60, 90. That's 30, that's 60, and that's the hypotenuse. Well, the hypotenuse is the biggest one. Well, what do you know about the hypotenuse compared to the side across from the 30? It's twice as big. So if that's 32, the little side is 16 because it's across from the 30. It's half the hypotenuse. So x is 16. This one here is little side times square root of 3. Remember, the medium side is little square root of 3. So this is 16 square root of 3. Okay, let's jump down to 31. We've got another 30, 60, 90 here. Since that's 30 and that's 90, that's 60. Remember your pattern. This is the little side, 12. To get the hypotenuse, you double the little side, so x is 24. And to get the medium side, you take little square root of 3, so y is 12 square root of 3. Okay, and then let's look at the last one here. The last one here, 8 square root of 3 is the side across from the 60. Well, if 8 square root of 3 is across from the 60, how do I go backwards from 60 to 30? To go from 30 to 60, I multiply by square root of 3. So to go backwards, I divide by square root of 3. So I do 8 square root of 3 divided by square root of 3, because I'm going back to the small one. Well, what happens? They cancel. So x is 8, and that makes sense because if little is 8, medium is 8 square root of 3. Now that I know that is 8, what is my hypotenuse? Double the little side, which is 16. So that is how we do the 30, 60, 90s. Sorry about that if y'all couldn't see it. I'm trying to get them all on the picture here. All right, so let's go back now and look at the 45, 45, 90s, which is the half of the squares, okay? And those are a little bit easier generally to operate through and get around. So let's look at the first one, which is 28. That's 45, so that has to be 45. That means this is isosceles. So if that's 20, y is 20. And what is the pattern? Whatever the legs are, the hypotenuse is square root of 2 larger. So the hypotenuse is going to be 20 square root of 2. Okay? Let's come down here to this guy. If that's 2 square root of 2 and that's my hypotenuse, how do I go backwards? Well, if to get to the hypotenuse I multiplied by square root of 2, and again this is a 45, 45, 90, to get back from the hypotenuse I divide by square root of 2, just like I did over here, which means my legs are both 2, which makes sense because it's isosceles. So on the 45, 45, 90 and the 30, 60, 90, you just have to know your ratios, okay? To get from little on the 30, 60, 90 to hypotenuse, you double it. To get from little to middle, you multiply by square root of 3. Anytime you're going from one to another and you have to multiply, if you go from that one back to the other, you divide. So if I went from middle back to little, I would divide by square root of 3. Same thing here. Now, here's a couple of things that you need to remember. What if I end up with something like this? Do you remember how to rationalize the denominator? Okay, I don't want a square root in the denominator, so what do? I multiply by that square root over that square root, and I end up getting something like this. So if you end up having to divide and you get an ugly fraction like this, you have to rationalize it. Same thing if it's a 30, 60, 90. What if I had 5 divided by square root of 2? Let's say 5 was my hypotenuse and I had to go backwards to get the leg. I don't want to leave it like that. I multiply by square root of 2 over square root of 2, and that gives me this. So again, I started with this. I don't want that. I rationalize the denominator. So that's how you do 30, 60, 90s.